minutes because you just get used to these patterns and you can repeat them, and then you can build stuff on the fly super easy without, I mean, what's cool is, and I never thought I would get to this point, but I've gotten to the point where I can code in my head almost. Like I don't even need to see the screen update. I can like write code. And I know Chris has seen this before because I remember when Chris was like early on, we were doing some like CSS work with him and he could only share like one screen at a time. So he was sharing like his code. And I was like, oh yeah, it's this thing. And now you have a red border. And he's like, how do you even know that? And I was like, I don't know. I just see it in my head
Yeah,
now.
because
Like,
you've done it a million
but
times, and that's just
because
it.
it's yeah, it's a pattern that just repeats. Um,
But I think
but yeah, I mean,
I was
good.
gonna say no. I think to that note, though, I think anybody getting into this, you just have to remember it's habits are important because it's just repetition, and you also have to be committed to lifelong learning, basically, because all these things are going to keep updating and changing. I mean, when we started using Next, what it was like, I don't know, maybe 5 iterations ago or something. Like it's on like I don't even know what its number it's on now, but it changes so much. They keep adding things, so you're
Yeah.
constantly going to be confronted with new problems and new things. And part of being a developer is just getting used to that, and getting used to that is just having that everyday experience of running into roadblocks, solving problems, and not being afraid to address them because you know you can
Yeah.
get through it.
Yeah. So before we sign off, I want to answer Timothy's question. Thank you, Timothy, for asking a question. You guys, just so you know, you're always more than welcome to ask any question inside of the
Yeah.
group here on the calls. But Timothy asked, he's been out, due to like some dental work, and he has a question. He wants to know,
Yeah.
I have a GitHub account, but honestly don't know what am I supposed to do with it and where do I start? So yeah, and Chris is answering. Once you have a GitHub account, you probably want to connect it to VS Code. That way you can do projects in VS Code and push to GitHub. So yeah, I'll just give you sort of like a basic overview of like what GitHub is and what Git is. So there, just so you know, there's two different things. There's Git and there's GitHub, and they operate sort of the same, but they are different. So Git is a software that you install on your computer. If you own a Mac, it's pre-installed. If you have a Windows computer, you have to install it because that's how Windows does everything, apparently.
Yep.
Um,
Never easy.
but yeah, very
It's
easy.
not a
So
bug, it's a feature.
yeah, it's a feature. So, and then GitHub is a online website where you can,
Owned by
it
Windows,
sort
by
of
the way, or
extend,
Microsoft.
yeah, they're both on Microsoft. Yeah. So GitHub is a website where you can it's an extension of GitHub where you can save your code online. So think of Git and GitHub as a way of saving code over time. So you have this like linear path of how your code has evolved over time. It's sort of like saving your progress in a video game, except the benefit to this is it's version control. So let's say like you were playing a video game and you went down the wrong path and you died. Instead of dying, you could just go back to where that fork in the road was and take the other path. So in code, right, you can go back to a previous version of your code if you broke something, and then like continue coding in that direction.
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Git and GitHub, I would say like the best thing to do is just start by just committing your own projects locally and pushing them to a
Mm-hmm.
repo that you've created on GitHub. Because that process will get you comfortable with just the basic functions of it and what you're going to use a lot of. And then you can kind of just explore other commands because it's all command line. So you can look up like the best 20, the most important 20 GitHub commands or something, or Git commands,
Yeah,
and you'll find
there's
tons of
there's a
lists.
really good one. If you just Google Git cheat sheet,
Yeah, that one's great.
there's a really good cheat. It's like usually the first thing that comes up. It's like a sort of like aqua teal colored page, and it has the most important commands that you're going to use. But just realize that there's one version that's on your own computer. So if you're using Git, that happens in the command line, and you can commit these changes, and then you can push them to GitHub. And you have to, like Chris said, you have to have a GitHub account that's already set up, and you have to basically connect it to your VS Code through the configuration, and you can look up how to do all that stuff in
Pretty
GitHub. It
easy.
sort of walks you through it when you set up your account. But that is something also that developers use when you get to the point where you're working on a team. That's how you share code between developers, and visualize and track code between developers. So it's something that if you want to actually find a career in software development, you 100% have to understand GitHub in and out.
And using it
Because
early is better, I think. Starting like, because
yeah,
also it's also good to build, because like everybody's gonna look at, you're gonna put that account, your GitHub on your resume. So it's good for people to see that you've made a lot of commits, you've done a lot of work, you've been using it throughout your learning process. And I think that's important because people can see your growth literally right there, on the screen.
yeah.